And good evening, everybody. Welcome to Fairway to Heaven right here on DSM Media. We're live, as always, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like it out, share it out, retweet it out. And if you want to get involved with the conversation, easiest way to do that is to head over to the DSM Media YouTube page. That's where we can put your comments, your questions, all your thoughts on this week's event, the Valspar Championship, up on the screen. Again, I'm your host, Phil Stiefel. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Beard of Knowledge. I am joined today by a special guest. We haven't seen him since the U.S. Open last year. You guys know him as PGA Tout on Twitter. I know him as John Haslbauer. Good evening, John. How you doing?
Doing well. Nice to be back. Good to hear your voice, Phil. Good to see your beard. I've missed it a lot, so happy to be here talking Valspar with you.
Only person that ever say that ever.
I'm very jealous. This is like as much as I haven't shaved in like close to 2 weeks, and this is as much as it's going to grow.
So real quick, I got to introduce you. You know, obviously, PGA Chat, you do great work. All your articles are fantastic. But I told you I'd save it for this. But I've had this bookmarked since you posted it on Twitter. So I got to play this real quick. You're more famous to me because of this video now than anything else.
I was very confident. The most confident I've ever been stepping over a putt.
Yeah. Oh man, this is. I mean, if you were given 100 tries at this, how many more times do you think you can knock this in?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because the story behind this, they didn't tell me. I thought I was just supposed to hit this sign. Okay. Apparently, it was like a closest to pin. So wherever your ball stopped is where it counted. So it didn't actually matter that I hit it. It was where it like I hit it pretty firm and it rolled away a little bit. And they were like, "Oh, that actually wasn't that good." Like the person said it to me, like, "Oh, that wasn't actually that good." And I was like, "All right, let me go again." And I went a second time and I hit it again. So that's the story behind that. And nobody else did.
The best part of that video, though, is in the beginning. I don't know who it is. I know that person. Somebody, whoever's recording, shouting that out as loud as possible. That's like,
yeah. Oh no. Well, it's a really funny story. So I went to Syracuse. That was like the ACC championship game at the Barclays Center, and a bunch of my friends from school got tickets together. And that game was at like 7, and I was actually working late that night. So I got there like right at tip off, but apparently they came into the crowd and they were like, "Are there any golfers here? We have like a halftime show." And all of my friends were like, "No, but our friend is coming and he's a golfer, so you should pick him." And they like waited until I got there, and then they grabbed me and they were like, "You're coming with us at halftime." And I was like, Are you like pulling my leg? And then I went down there, and it was me and like 2 girls who were like on the Wake Forest field hockey team. And it was like Syracuse alumni versus Wake Forest alumni because we were playing each other. And they were like talking some crap to me before the game. They were like, "We're college athletes." And I was like, "Do you golf?" They're like, "No, but we hit a ball with a stick all day. Like, you're going down." And I was like, "Okay." So then I got real confident going over there, and I hit 2 in a row, and nobody else came close. And they didn't want to hear it from me afterwards, but I was confident stepping over that putt. Absolutely.
I like it. I like it. Dude, I guarantee if I had one of those chances, 100 of those chances, 1,000 of those chances, there's no way I'm anywhere near that. No way. No way. And not just because of the pressure, not because you're putting on a basketball court, just because I can't putt. I mean, if you take away putting, I'm a scratch golfer. But you add putting to the equation, that's why I have like a 2,000 handicap. It's because I cannot putt a golf ball. So there's literally zero chance that I'm coming anywhere near that. But anyway, had to start the show off with a little fun, a little lightheartedness there. As we get in this week, we got the Valspar Championship coming off last week's to some carnage at the Players Championship. And I think most weeks we just normally move right into talking about the week's event that's coming up. But I think understanding what happened last week at the Players Championship is so important this week because of the weather, because of the long week, because of all the stress that event put on people. I think the players that played last week and the players that played deep into Monday are slightly at a disadvantage this week. So real quick, what were your thoughts on how the week went last week at the Players Championship and all the rain delays and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I'm actually one, I very rarely do these like weather stacks. I just believe there's too much randomness in weather to predict, and you just don't know what side's going to be the right side. Usually, like sometimes it's very rarely is it clear. Sometimes it is, but usually it's random. Everybody thought the PMAM wave going in was going to be the advantage. Nobody anticipated we'd be, not done with round one on like Saturday, So um it was a lot worse than people expected. And that just added a whole bunch of randomness to the tournament. When you have a random weather event like that, you get an Anirban Lahiri in contention, because if you're just on the right side of the wave, you have a distinct advantage over guys like Xander and Brooks. So a little unfortunate because I burned Colin Morikawa in one and done, and it's a perfect course for him. And he's just it was a losing battle going against that weather. So that stinks. If I could, maybe one regret of the week was I should have like really considered that the weather could like completely wipe people out. But in the end, good for Cam Smith. Guy was nails down the stretch. Not off the tee. Like I was joking with my friends, like he couldn't have driven the ball any worse, and it did not matter at all because he was absolutely perfect with his approaches, his wedges, and his putting. So if you can do that, the only reason I didn't play Cam Smith in this tournament in DFS or bet him was because I thought he was going to do what he did on those last 4 drives that he hit, which is just not find the fairway, find trouble, have to punch out, but he still saved par when he was in trouble. So kudos to him. I escaped with a profitable week with the Tom Hoagie first round leader and a couple placement props. So I'm happy to turn the page to Valspar now.
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. So I have this thing. I am basically betting Cam Smith every single event he plays this year. I have in my book Cam Smith winning 4 events this year. He's already won 2. So I am betting Cam Smith every single week. I've already got I got my Masters bet on him. Before the calendar year even changed, they're already offering me that. So I was all over Cam Smith. I loved Cam Smith this week, not just because of my rule book, but because I thought he could play really well here or there at the championship there. But I it's one of these things. So you bring up Colin Morikawa, and it's a really thing. I'm big on recency. I do look at course history and tournament history and stuff like that. I really do. But I really like playing golfers that are on fire, that play well the week before, the last 3 weeks, the last 4 weeks. So, but I'm this week, I'm 110% focused on ignoring last week. Is that an okay thought process and something that a lot of people should be doing this week, right?
Yeah, I mean, now it's at a point where guys who played last week at all are kind of at a disadvantage because they have one less day to prep, and it was just grueling. Like they couldn't leave their hotel rooms, and they couldn't practice at all, and it was freezing when you're out there. And we're also coming off the API, which was also a horrible condition. So if you played the last 2 weeks, you're really beaten up right now. So I might take that into consideration. I'm not gonna, if I already like somebody, I'm not gonna fade them because they had a long week at the Players. But I would
think
say
it's
maybe.
going to come down to I always write like my potential player pool. I don't know how many guys I know. I read your articles, which you can find at PJ Tout, Twitter account there. Um, you know, I write all my player pool, my potential. I have 35, 40 names, and then I trim it down to about 20 names. I play about 22, 23 lineups. So I try to stay in that 20, 21 players in my pool. And I think if it comes down to it, where it's down to like I'm down to 25 names, and I've got to eliminate 2 names or something like that, a guy that might have maybe Harold Varner, Sam Burns, guys like that. Maybe not. I'm not sure. Paul Casey would have been somebody that I might have faded at the last second. He withdrew. But that's the way I'm looking at it. We have some questions already jumping in here. We got Tax chiming in. He had Mito top 10 a few weeks ago based off of your advice, but couldn't make a 5-foot putt. So who is going to miss putts this week based off of your opinions?
Who do I like to miss putts? That's a good question. Yeah, that was very frustrating because Mito had one of the best tee to green tournaments of his career, his short career, and the actual worst putting outing of his life. So I still think down the line he is maybe not, I don't know if I can guarantee at this point that he'll win the Honda Classic, but I think he's a guy that's always going to do well on that course. And eventually he'll figure out this putter. Who to avoid on the greens this week? Well, I was actually going to say Keegan is probably the one guy I would say, like, based on what happened last week, I'm probably going to avoid this guy because you could tell how much of an emotional strain that was on him. He's like one of the most nervy guys on tour. He did enough to get himself in position to win that tournament. And obviously the bogey on 17 and hitting it in the water on 18, it quickly went away. But, you know, that was an emotional roller coaster. And I don't know if he can just flip the script this week at really short odds for Keegan.
Absolutely. All right, so the Valspar's played at Innisbrook Resort, Copperhead. It's a 7,300, yard course. A wide range of people have won here. Some really big names. Paul Casey's won twice. Sam Burns won last year. You've had guys all over the field of play, that have won this event. You write an excellent article and course preview every week. I don't know, how sober you were when you wrote it this week, being that you were on a bachelor party weekend. But tell us a little bit about this Innisbrook course and things that people might not know about this course.
Yeah, I endorsed Kevin Knox accidentally instead of Russell Knox. That should tell you exactly where my headspace was at the time of writing that article. Yes, I was in Scottsdale this weekend, and I'm fresh off a red eye from this morning. So hoping to keep it together for this show. But anyway, I did do the research before the trip, so the research is good. Things to know about Valspar: there's 5 par threes, which is unique. All the par threes are difficult to score on, so you're not really going to make an advantage if you're like a great par 3 scorer. It's maybe a nice to have. Maybe you pick up a birdie or so here, but most of the field's going to try to play those 5 holes at even par. The par 4s are all pretty challenging, and most of them are forced layups where you're probably going to have to hit like a driving iron off the tee to keep the driver in the bag. So off the tee does not really matter so much. It was one of the least important tracks for off the tee on tour this week, which really funnels it into being an approach course and a scrambling course with the fairways are tough to hit and the greens are tough to hit in regulation. I think par 5 scoring usually tells the story of who's going to do well at this tournament. Sam Burns was spectacular par 5 scoring last year when he won. So I'm looking at guys who score well on par 5s, who are good, like really good, like class approach players, and who can putt on Bermuda. It is like a slightly overblend Bermuda, but in general, we're on the Florida swing. So if you've putted well on Bermuda, I think that should translate here. And just like general short game. So approach short game putting, and par 5 scoring. That's really how I'm honing in on my player pool.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because we're pretty spot on together on that thought. I mean, I don't think I've ever, we use fantasynational.com, great place to plug them. They're a partner of the show. Best model making tools. They give you the tools to really make the best decisions. I don't think I've ever had in my model something 25%, and I have 25% approach on my model this week. That to me, I don't think I've ever gone above 20%. I'll normally pick 2 or 3 stats, 20% each, then balance out the rest of my model. I got 25% on approach this week. So I think that kind of sums up how important the approach is this week. And par 5 scoring, I agree with you 110%. So let's dive right into the field because we already had one other question here. I guess Tax knows you because he keeps asking you a lot of questions here. The first half of his question, the JT and DJ burned up Sunday part, because I'm looking at the board and I'm looking at the top end of the board. Justin Thomas is your 111K guy. You got Hovland, Morikawa, Xander, and DJ. And DJ is the one that circles me. We know who Victor Hovland is at this point. He hasn't won a major event, a big event on the PGA yet, but his short games leaves a little bit to be desired. Colin, Xander missed the cut, but you kind of throw that out of the equation. DJ is a name that I'm curious on your opinions about, because DJ's been good golfer, but not DJ golfer level, for a while now. He shot a 63 on Monday. Is that a little blip on the radar, or is that signs that maybe he's getting his game back together?
Yeah, I think the story with DJ really since his last win at the beginning of 2021, it's been a while and it's been over a year now. He's just struggled to put 4 good rounds together. Every time he has a tournament where he shoots the low round of the day, he also has a round where he's a couple over par. So um, I'm not seeing that 63 and saying DJ's back. I'm in on him now. With that said, I'm looking at the odds board where he is right now. The best number I can see on him is an 18. I think like if it was 20, if it was like literally that difference, I'd probably be like, yeah, okay, I'll take a chance on DJ because you just never know. Um, but DJ's great because he hits the ball a mile and he's great off the tee. That's not really an asset that matters as much here. And the approach game's been fine, but not where it had used to be. So I'm a little worried that the premium you have to pay on a DJ, it may not be worth it for what this course like asks of you. And everybody knows that he just came off that 63. So I think he might be a little popular. And he may end up being a fade, but if I'm wrong and I'm overthinking this and he's not popular and everybody just wants to start with Vic and Colin and JT, then I'll go there for leverage in DFS.
Yeah. Excuse me. I can't. Man. Excuse me. Sorry. I figured. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what that was. I'm coughing on my own breath right now here. You're talking about Colin, Victor, and JT, and you just got me all verklempt here. JT, I say it. I'm looking at Victor Hovland. I know I'm pretty sure you're probably going to be pretty high on Colin Morikawa in this group, but Victor Hovland is the guy that I think is my number one choice in this, range. I mean, I know his short game leaves a lot to be desired. I know his putting isn't really good, but literally everything else he does is so good. I mean, approach wise, is there a better guy on approach right now than him? And I'm just trying to judge whether it's worth the risk in the short game he's probably going to be pretty highly owned and the price that's my short. I want Victor Hovland to be my top used guy above 10K, but I'm concerned that all three little things there don't line up right.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually fine. Like you want to have a good short game here. You're going to miss a lot of greens. Victor Hovland's hitting the ball at a level right now on approach where he's going to miss fewer greens than the rest of the field is. So if there's one stat category that you're going to be like deficient to the field in, around the greens, like the one that you want to be the worst at, because if you're hitting greens, then it doesn't matter. I think that he will be more popular than Colin. He'll probably be the most popular play at the top of the board just because in his debut he had a top 5 finish, and he's obviously in incredible form over the last however many starts. Yeah, how many like top 10s does he have? I'm thinking of him as a top 10 bet this week. I think I've seen plus odds on him there, and another guy I'll be curious to see where the ownership is because I would expect Colin, Victor, and Justin Thomas to all do well at this course. I probably rank them Thomas, Victor, Colin in that order of like who I expect to do best this week. But they're all in that sort of 11-1 range right now. There's not a clear cut favorite.
It's crazy. Justin Johnson was 35 or 40-1 last week, and all of a sudden he's back up into the sub 20s, and just like that 163 just totally changed his odds. All right, yeah. So 10K out of the equation there. There might be very few 10K plays even on my card in general. In the 9K range is where you start to get interesting. Louis Oosthuizen, great course history. Hatton, Lowry, Burns, the defending champ. Answer, who's in my model, looks awful, but everything in my mind and gut tells me that Abraham Answer should play really well here. Jason Kokrak, a guy, I don't think I've ever played him at 9,200, but he's another guy. I think that was the first bet I made this week was Jason Kokrak 25-1. Again, something tells me that those guys. So I love a lot of these guys. What are you looking at in this range here?
Yeah, my first impression was Abe. I'm sure I'll play him in DFS. He will probably be one of the chalkier plays this week. I think he has 2 top 15s or 2 top 20s in his last 2 starts here. Just plays these positional courses really well, where if you don't have to be long and just play out of the fairway, that's where he tends to thrive. His strokes gain numbers aren't like really at the level that we were used to seeing him this time last year. So maybe he's not as popular as he's been. He's been stringing together a lot of like top 30s in a row, but not really in the top 20. So um, I think I probably will get cold feet on the outright just because he's priced at a premium at the top of the board, and he's won once, but he doesn't have that like threatening win equity. So, aside from Abe, I'm with you on Kokrak. I bet Kokrak here last year. He was in the mix the whole weekend, had a tough putting Sunday, and sort of drifted out of contention. But he loves this course. He plays really well in this Florida swing. I was really high on him last week when he was 120-1. So it's crazy that he's drifted that much after a T50, but goes to show you how important the course history is here. A guy who's long and can really take advantage of the par 5 scoring, which, that's so important here. So those are 2 guys I like a lot. There's a lot in this range. Like Lowry makes sense to me. Tommy Fleetwood, you can make a case for. Matt Fitzpatrick's got his brother in the field, so maybe he's a little motivated by that. I think I will have like two guys from the 9Ks and up in like almost all my lineups this week.
Yeah, I mean, when I did my first build, my temporary build, my whatever you want to call it, the first lineup I built just to see how they were playing out, my potentials, I clicked both those guys, Answer and Kokrak, and started there and saw what it would leave me left, to build the rest of my lineup. And it's a lot to spend. What is it, 93 and 9,200 on 2 guys? But I think there's enough really good value when we get into the 7K, especially the low 7K, that you could get away with playing both those guys, or whether you want to go Lowry and Fitz or any of those guys. Any of those guys like Lowry, Hatton, guys that, had rough Mondays. I keep wanting to say Sundays, but rough Mondays and, really long weekends. Someone like Lowry, a little older, not the fittest of guys in the world. Maybe he's a little tired. I don't know. I'm pulling the threads here, trying to find that narrative that those that played the entire event and contended, might struggle. I'm trying. Casey already withdrew, and he's the older guy, So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to pull some threads here.
The one other thing that I wanted to bring up at the top, I think Innisbrook, the course we're playing this week, is a really good comp to both Southern Hills and Brookline, where the PGA Championship and the US Open are this year. They're all courses that they're like heavily tree lined, and you're not hitting driver off the tee on every hole. It favors like being on the right side of the course position, and not like super long and difficult scoring. So I think a lot of guys are here to tune up, and we saw a little bit of that last year, where more guys were playing at Torrey Pines for the Farmers because they knew they were coming back for the US Open. I think there's an element of that here, where it would make so much sense for these guys to withdraw, but I think they want to get a little bit of exposure on a tougher course, hit those shots, get it in the memory bank, then go to the WGC match play, and then probably take some weeks off afterwards to recover. So I don't know if they're going to be hurting. Lowry, like you said, he had that ace too, so he might have been partying. We don't know. But I think they're going to give it their attention this week. I think these guys want to test themselves, and they see a little correlation in tee shots that they can hit here. Remember that when it comes to major season.
Yeah. So far we've only had Paul Casey, Doug Gim, and Sebastian Munoz so far. They're the only withdrawals so far, right?
Yeah, I think McNeely and Cam Young, while the players were still going on, they were like, I'm not going there. But as of today, the guys you mentioned are the additional ones that have dropped out. It seems like at this point, the guys who would have dropped out are out.
Right. Gotcha. I mean, there's always that, Hideki, right after the lineup's lock withdrawal, or, the Matt Wolf after one hole withdrawal. That always happens, especially the guys I play. That's a guarantee that one guy that I have, Hideki last week was one of them. I didn't get, Hideki out of any of my lineups in time. All right, let's go into the 8K range, because Normally when I run my model, I don't know how you do your model. I wasn't big into models last year. I'm really big into my models this year. When I do my model, I guarantee you that I could name 7 or 8 of the guys that are going to be in the top 10 of my model. No questions asked, just because I know who's good on approach. I know who's good at whatever stats I'm focusing in on this week. The guy that popped in my model, and I mean, he's played decently this year. Let me see here. He's got terrible course. Well, he's got okay course history. He's Hey, before the Players, he missed a couple cuts. A guy that popped in my model. Let me refresh the order here so I could see. He finished second in my model this week, and I was not seeing it coming, and I'm a little confused. It's Harold Varner, and it's like when someone finishes second in my model, they're in every single lineup, no doubt about it. But Harold Varner in this field, is he really the second best player in this field? I know he's 8,600, but that kind of confused me. That kind of just proved my point. Sometimes models could be skewed a little bit and can kind of be a little confusing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because that model's not even going to feed any of the stats from when he won in the Saudi league.
Exactly.
So his numbers are actually even better than what they look like on that sheet. I'm trying to pull up where he was in mine because I know he was higher than I expected to. He's 25th in mine.
So I do mine off of 36 rounds, and I told you most of my thing is around approach. He's 10th, in approach, 14th shots gained total, which I sprinkle in a small percentage, at like 5% every single week. I have a small amount of shots gained total. I think it's a underappreciated stat. And he's 14th in 400 to 450 par fours. He's 7th around the green, 19th in opportunities gained. So, I mean, it's not even like he's number one in any one category or anything like that.
Yeah,
Kind of
well, I think I know exactly where we differ because you were talking about how you care the most about what you've done lately and not what you've done in the past. And I have a pretty high weight on course history. And his results here are not that great, just from like a strokes gain standpoint. His results were not great at the Players either. And then he went on to, contend all week, finished 6th at the Players. So he's a guy that can just ride form and turn it on. I will probably have him in a handful of lineups, depending on how many I make. But yeah, I think he's looked pretty good. If you don't put like a ton of like water hazards and high pressure shots around him, he's great. And there's like water here, but there's not a ton of water. So I think he makes sense this week. I'm curious to see how popular he becomes.
Yeah. Okay. So some of the other names that I think are interesting to at least, mention and talk about, obviously Bubba Watson, kind of, how do I describe Bubba? This is kind of like a creative type course. You got to be creative to contend here. And Bubba is probably the most creative shot maker, ball striker there is on tour. They were talking on, I don't know if it's on the Golf Channel or on NBC's broadcast, about how they were asking him about how he does X, Y, and Z on a certain shot. And Bubba's response was, I don't know. It just happens. And it kind of like that's totally Bubba. He really doesn't know what he's doing. He just does it really well. So Bubba's a name that I think is interesting. Cameron Tringali, I know missed a cut last week, but Russell Knox is a name. Webb Simpson is a name that I think should do well here, but I'm just not excited about Webb Simpson yet this year or ever. I don't know. So what else are you looking at here in this range?
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on Bubba. And I think to go back to the point of like, how much should we be reading into fatigue from the week before? Bubba seems to be like fatigue proof because he just moves on right away. He's not a guy who's like needed that extra day to grind on the range. He wasn't even going to pick up the club anyway. So I don't think it hurts him that he played the Players the week before. He drew the worst wave and he made it through the cut and was like one of the few guys under par on that nasty weather day. So the game's not far away. He finished second to Varner in that Saudi event not too long ago. He's been like pretty quiet in terms of like events that he's playing this year. But like you said, he's a creative shot maker. He hasn't won at this event, but he actually has the most like total strokes gained at Valspar of anyone in the field. So I like him a lot. I have a bet on him. Spoiler alert, if we if we get to that part of the segment. But big fan of Bubba this week, and I'd say Gary Woodland is the only other guy in this 8K range that I'll probably be playing. He won here like a decade ago, and has looked good on the Florida swing. Could have easily won at the API. Had that unfortunate bunker incident on 17. But he's looked good, and you're just kind of waiting for him to look healthy. And once we get a healthy Gary Woodland back, you have the caliber of player who's won a major. This field is good, but it's not that good for him to be 8,500 and in the 70s of the odds board. So I think it's a good value on him this week.
No, I agree with you. Gary Woodland is a guy I typically, even with his, inconsistent recent history, I still love to play Gary Woodland at certain spots. And, I don't know. I'm not sure. I want to jump right to the first guy in the 7K range. It's a guy that obviously there's a lot of talk about him. And he might be pretty high owned. I'm not sure where he's going to fall in ownership. And on a side note, I'd love to get your opinion. It's something we've talked about with a lot of guests on this show, that I think sometimes people get too far into ownership percentage. I know it's an important factor in building lineups, but sometimes people fade people just to fade them, just to get away. If you think a guy has a real legit chance at winning, especially further down the board, I don't think it matters what his ownership percentage is going to be. I think if you're that confident in a guy, and Adam Hadwin's one of those guys right there at the top at 7,900. Adam Hadwin, he was my second bet I made at 70-1. So Jason Kokrak 25-1, Hadwin 70-1. To me, ownership percentage on those two guys, because they're two of my favorite plays this week, shouldn't be a factor in my mind. On that thought process, what do you think?
I tend to agree with you, but it definitely depends on the type of contest that you're playing. If you're doing like the 150 max MME, and you're playing, it's tough to play the chalk, because you have to beat so many people, and so many people are rostering a guy like that. So if you're just playing game theory and he's 25% owned and he's Adam Hadwin, and he misses the cut, then a quarter of the field is gone. And he has great course history and he's coming in good form. But if he also came out and missed the cut, are we really shocked that Adam Hadwin didn't make the cut? I don't know. He was 7-1 top 20 bet last week that cashed. So he's in my good graces. Very happy with his performance at the Players. Obviously a past winner here, 7,900 doesn't really make a lot of sense as a price here. That's way too low. He's won here. Obviously the course history is good, and I think he's on a pretty long made cut streak. And he keeps finding success.
The last two times here he missed the cut. I know that, but then he had his win. But yeah, for the most part, he's making a lot of cuts in general right now.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking form coming in. I didn't really see miss the cut at the Genesis. But he has a bunch of top 30s. He has 4 top 30s in his last 6 starts. So maybe a placement bet for me this week. He's kind of priced in that range where I like to get a 3 or 4-1 top 20 bet. So I'll have to see where he lands on the board, but in good form. Yeah. I'm curious to see where his ownership ends up.
I think you bring up another great strategy point though, when you said that what event, because I've brought this up a few times too. What events, when you listen to some of the bigger podcasts and they talk about ownership percentage, they're playing the big buy-in events or the whatever. I play the 20 entry quarter jukebox. Okay. I play single entry events. Yes, larger single entries or 3 max entries. Ownership percentages, first off, in the smaller buy-ins, to an extent, are a little bit different. I forget, was it Russell Henley or Russell Knox? A few weeks ago, somebody was supposed to be super chalky. And everyone's like, oh, he's 29% or 28% this week. And I looked at my board, and I owned him in 3 lineups. I think it was Russell Henley. I only put him in 3 of my 22 lineups because of this. And he was only 18 or 19% owned. So there's about 11% difference between what everybody was talking about and in the quarter jukebox, which is, again, a totally different ballgame.
Yeah. And if you're playing 20 lineups and he's going to be 20% owned, then just put 40% of your lineups or Hadwin, and then it's not really a problem that he's chalky. You're taking a stance on him. You're saying you fully expect him to do well. So then you just take a stance and say, if Adam Hadwin is not going to play well, then I'm not going to have a good week. But if you think he's going to win, I do that a lot with my DFS strategy. I try to get the guys in my betting card in my lineups because I think those guys have a chance to win. So a lot of my outright winning weeks tend to be overlapping with some of my better DFS weeks, which is not every week.
Yeah, exactly. That was last week for me. I definitely had a lot of Cam Smith, a lot of Dustin Johnson, which bailed me out on the last day there. But yeah, exactly. Although when I make a stand, I make a stand on a point. Like I said, beginning of this season, my point was I don't care the ownership percentage. I'm playing John Rahm every single week. I played John Rahm and Luke List at the Farmers, and it worked out great for me. But then, then after that week, I made that statement public on the show, and then John Rahm's career has fallen off the toilet. And I don't think John Rahm has looked worse since I've made that statement. So I'm saying, don't worry about ownership percentage. This week is the week that ownership percentage is going to mean more than anything. Because that's just the way it is for me.
I like what you're doing because in golf, it's such a week to week game, and it's not like football or baseball where you have your favorite team and you follow them around everywhere. So I like to take stances like that too, where I do it with Sebastian Munoz, where every single week I'm rooting for this one guy for one round, and then we move on. It doesn't really matter, if he wins or not. I'm rooting for the guy every single week, and then you have like a favorite player like that. So I think it's necessary to have those consistent guys if you're gonna watch a season worth of golf.
It's also important to have consistent strategies. If your strategy works 1 or 2 weeks and then it doesn't work for 2 weeks, it's important not to go away from your strategy because, like you said, golf, every tournament's different, every course is different. If your strategy works, stick to it because in the long run, it's going to pay off if it's a winning strategy. So yeah, Hunter checking in saying that you had quite the bit of excitement over Munoz last week and before that withdrawal. So, yeah.
I know. A lot of people were trying to convince me to bet him outright, and I'm not like I'll never bet Munoz outright, but I bet him first round leader regardless of form or fit or anything. And he's a tricky guy to pin down for outrights because he's always a long number and he's not really a specialist in any one thing. But anyway, I hope he's okay. I hope he's not like.
All right, so we spent like literally the last 10 minutes in the 7K range just talking about Adam Hadwin and all. So real quick, because we got a little bit more time here, what other names in this 7K range are you eyeballing up here?
I am looking through because I guess I would start with Bezaden, who I've seen him on some betting cards. I'm curious your take on him because I think he does make sense here, but I've never seen this guy in contention once. And I look down and his strokes gain numbers are pretty good, but his results are like just a bunch of top 30s. So I don't think I'll get there on an outright, but 7,900 seems a little cheap for the type of player that he is. Matthias Schwab is sort of a random guy, but he's on a pretty long list of or a good streak of cuts made. Really good par 5 scorer. So I'll take that at 7,300. Adam Svensson is definitely going to be on my first round leader card. He is my first stand-in to Sebastian Munoz if he's ever not in the field. I'm playing Adam Svensson. That guy makes 5 birdies for every 5 bogeys he makes. Love him in first round leader. Martin Laird is the guy I like. You talked about Harold Varner jumping to 2. He was actually number 5 in my model, which I thought was crazy. Has been awesome tee to green for the last like 3 to 4 to 5 months. Just hasn't been able to putt consistently, but type of guy that can pop with the putter. And I'll definitely go back to Mito again because again, talking about consistency. Tee to green, like if Keegan Bradley can play well on a course, I don't see why Mito Pereira can't also play well on that course. If Keegan was hitting enough putts to contend, I have to believe that Mito has a higher putting upside, and these last couple weeks have been a blip on the radar, but he's due to turn it around. I'd like to think so. I'll be betting him again. I'll be playing him again. I won't jump ship right now.
You basically read off most of my 7K cards: Schwab, Mito, Laird, Svensson, all guys that I've got starred off that are played. So the way my process goes, I write down every name in the 10, 9, 8. I'm very old school. I go hand paper here. Okay. I don't go computerized. I write all the names down. And then I do a check mark if they've got good course history. Then I do a star if they've got recent success. And then I circle them if they're both. And
Nice.
dude, yeah, I mean, the only name that you did not mention that has both check marks and stars next to it is Denny McCarthy at 7,400, who's got decent course history, has decent recent form. I like him this week. I want to go back to Bazudenhout for a second. You brought him up, and I don't know why he's not on my list. I mean, he was 20th in my model. He's never played here before, so he has no tournament history. And, I mean, he didn't play last week at the Players, but I mean, he's got a top 20 in the Arnold Palmer, tied 25th at the Honda. I mean, is he going to win? Absolutely not. But is it worth taking a chance on Bazudenhout to get another top 20? I don't know. I'm trying to look at all his numbers here. He's a good
Did he
short
play last
player.
week?
It does not have him listed in the field last week here as
Because I was just gonna say,
a black spot out by his name here, so it doesn't have cut or a finishing position. So it does not have him listed here on my list here. So
interesting. I wonder if he didn't qualify. I was gonna say, like, nasty conditions is when you really want to play Bazunu because he's such a short game specialist, especially on Bermuda. But I don't think the conditions are going to be that crazy. It's actually going to be playing pretty soft with all the rain they've gotten. So I probably won't get there unless maybe like everyone plays Hadwin at 79 and not him, and there's like a significant ownership leverage to get between the two.
Yeah, one other name I just want to shout out there because I think it's a name that we're going to see a lot more of popping up on people's plays. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't have great course history. He's got a T60, two T60s his last two times here, but a guy that's been playing much better golf this year. He hasn't missed a cut in I don't know how long. Is Patton Kaziri, and it's a name that I think people. I mean, he's 7,200 this week. That's a guy that's slowly going to start creeping up the price board. So if you want to play him, you better keep getting him in while his price is cheap, because it's a name that he wasn't on my beginning of the year, like look out for this guy kind of guy. But that's a guy that's going to win a golf tournament, at some point this year. And I think people need to start watching out for him.
I think that's a very good call. I really overlooked him, but he's a approach and putting specialist, and that could come into play like really important at this week. We talked about the importance of approach play and the emphasis on that in the modeling. He's not a very good driver of the golf ball, but you're not hitting a lot of drivers here. So that is actually the type of player that I'm looking for at this event, where you get a discount because he's losing strokes with the driver. I like that play. I think you've probably convinced me to get him in a couple more lineups.
The other thing with him is, he scores good fantasy points. He scores for his price and for his level of, the respect that he gets. I mean, being in the top 40 in DraftKings points scored, for him, at 7,100, I think that's a fair number. I try to do everything like that. I look at a player, I look at their ownership percentage, their price, their chances of winning, and I try to come up with, I don't know, maybe this exists somewhere on a site. It doesn't on Fantasy National. I don't know how to calculate it. I look at the potential value and return on investment. And I wish there was a way to come up with that number. But I look at Pat Kaziri, and this week I see a really good potential return on my investment.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you right now, I'm locking him in on the first round leader card, if nothing else.
I love it.
Great. He's definitely been a first round leader recently. I couldn't tell you where, but I know he, like you said, he can get hot. He can get streaky. I like it. I think he makes a lot of sense here.
All right. I love it. All right. So the 6K range is pretty bleak, I want to guess is the word I want to use this week. I don't know if you even need to dip down into it, because you don't have to go a whole hell of a lot of top heavy. You don't need to play a lot of stars and scrubs lineup, I guess is what I'm saying, where you need a lot of 6K guys. Do you like any of the guys, though, in the 6K range this week?
It's so ugly down here. And I usually try to force myself, and maybe this is like a terrible habit that I have in DFS why I don't win more, but I usually try to force myself to feel good about somebody really deep down here so I can get a more top heavy lineup and get more exposure to the big guys. But It's bleak down here. I think the guys that I like enough to play are probably Pat Perez at 6,900. Good, like guy who probably does circle both of those boxes of form and course history here. And then like Vaughn Taylor, which is like so ugly to say. But he's 6,700. He's got back-to-back top 20s at this event. Finished T7 at the Puerto Rico Open, which isn't saying much, but has made a few cuts coming in. I think he's top 25 in approach around the green and a putting. I think those three, or it was fairways approach around the green. So if you can do those three things well, I'll take my chances at 6,700. And then the longest bomb that I was considering was Bill Haas.
You had somebody else piping in about Bill Haas here, somewhere in the comments.
Somebody mentioned Billy H, and I was like, "Wait,
top 10 this week." I don't know about top 10. That's a stretch.
You get a great number on that if you're looking for it. But I'm considering him in like the top 40 market because I feel like you can get a good number on him. Has made the cut either 4 or 5 consecutive times at this event. The form is like better than you would think for Bill Haas. Like he's finishing like top 40 in like 4 of his last 5 or something like that. And this is the type of course where you can kind of play that old man game and just swing easy, hit the fairways, hit the greens, make your pars, survive into the weekend. Like
so I don't know if you know, I'm known as the 6K whisperer. Okay. I had Davis Thompson a few weeks ago. I think he finished 39th or 40th or whatever. I seem to find those low price chips. And I think you bring up a great point. Maybe I do force myself too much to play these 6K guys because really the only two that I thought about playing this week realistically was Pat Perez and Vaughn Taylor. They were the 2 guys. I'm like, if I got to play guys, they're it. But because of the fact that they're the only 2 guys, I'm going to still have to. I can't play 5 Pat Perez lineups and 5 Vaughn Taylor lineups. I just can't do it. That's too much exposure to those 2 guys. So I started doing some looking around, and my 6K whisperer pick of the week this week, he actually, again, this is one of those where the models make no sense. He's 6,100. He finished 24th in my model. He missed the cut here last year. His last event was in Puerto Rico where he had a tied for 7th. It's Cameron Percy.
Big model guy. He's always in the models. I don't understand why.
I know. But you know what? I'm going to keep my thread going that I'm going to play one guy under 6,200 every single week, whether he gets in 1 lineup or 20 lineups. I don't know till I write those lineups tomorrow afternoon. But Cameron Percy might be my guy this week.
I'm pretty sure Anirban Lahiri was 6,100 last week, so maybe that's a good omen.
Hey, everybody's got to have their guy there. All right, so let's wrap the show up here. I want to talk about your bets real quick. You already mentioned a couple of them real quick. You mentioned a lot of first-round leader bets. How do you continue to make first-round leader bets? Because I gave them up this year. It's like Lent. It's like my thing I'm giving up for the entire season because last year I did not hit 1 first-round leader bet. Is there a way you could place your bet second place leader after 1 first round? Because I hit about 10 guys that I bet first round leader that finished in second place after the first round. And I was so frustrated that I stopped betting it. I'm done. I'm out. So I don't know how you're continuing to do that and deal with that stress. But, what other kind of bets you got this week that you really like?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't credit it to any like secret sauce or anything. The first round leader bets to me, I've always said they're just entertainment bets. There's really no point of getting invested in golf on Thursday. So much changes. Friday, you have the cut sweat. Saturday, you're not working. So like you have a full day of golf if you want to watch it. Otherwise you're distracted, whatever. Sunday is like the big day. Thursday is not like, there's not really consequences. So I love the first round leader bet just to have a little skin in the game, get me interested in what's going on. And then I, like we were saying earlier in the show, I like to have a little structure. So, I bet like 5 guys usually at 80 to 1 plus most weeks. I hit back-to-back first-round leaders with Rory at API and Hoagie chopping at the players. I've never done that before. So hoping to make it 3 in a row. Unfortunately, I can't bet Munoz. So I haven't placed any of these yet, but I know I'm going to have Svensson and Kazire. I think I have this Data Golf Scratch like premium thing now, and it's really, really great for first round leaders because it gives you the whole board in an instant, and it gives you like their value on it and everything. So FanDuel has a 95-1 on Kazire first round leader. So I will be there. And I'm looking up Svensson. He's 150-1 on DraftKings. So I'm definitely going to be there. And I'll find like 2 or 3 more guys, but I put the same amount in.
I haven't made a first round leader bet. I promised myself I was going to stick to my system this year, but because of you coming on the show, I am going to have to bet Svensson and Kaziri first round leader. I can't let you hit them and not me. I just can't do it.
I went on a show last week too, and I said Hoagie. So this is maybe it's a new tradition now. But that's the thing with first round leader. You're betting 101 guys. Like you don't have to put that much on it to feel the returns of it. So I don't know. I'll probably add like 2 or 3 more guys in the 80 plus range for first round leader. For outright so far, I've bet Bubba Watson at 75-1, Gary Woodland at 80-1, Mito at 160, and Martin Laird at 180. I have room in my card to either bet Justin Thomas, and that's it. Or if I don't do that, I'm thinking like Xander and one other guy in like the mid 20s. So I have to make that decision right now.
Yeah, that's actually where I'm stuck at right now because I've got 4 bets. I got Kokrak, Answer 25-35. I got Hadwin 71. I got Aaron Wise 100-1.
Very similar,
I bet 6 units on outrights. I've bet 4 single units. I've got 2 units left. Do I bet 2 more guys in that 20 to 40 range, or do I double up on Victor Hovland, which I actually have not a strong enough feeling, but I do like Victor Hovland this week. I think he's a top 5 finish this week. How to justify that? I'm not really sure which way I'm going to go just yet. I mean, we still got about 36 hours till lineups and the card locks and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there's a little less randomness in this event than definitely what we saw the last couple of weeks where there's so much water and high winds. Like we tend to see the good players up there. We've seen a lot of guys at like 25 or under to 1 win this event. So I want exposure to one of those like top 5 ranked players in the world. Whether it's JT, Xander, Colin, Hovland, maybe DJ, like one of those 5 guys, I want them on my card. And I'll just see who else I can fit in after I get one of those guys.
Awesome. The one thing I will say is to shout out to our man BK, Brian. He has convinced the golf world to finally get off Louis Oosthuizen. And Louis Oosthuizen's at 16-1. He is a guy that should have good course fit. So since every single person in the golf betting community is joining Brian and getting off of Oost, this is the week that Louis Oosthuizen wins. It's just going to happen. We know that, right?
I mean, that's just too perfect. That's really the narrative that we should be chasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, that might be the bet. Everyone's off of him. He's 16-1 right now on DraftKings. Maybe I throw 2 units on Louis. Maybe.
I was thinking about it. If I go with Xander and Louis, it's the same unit stake as if I do a solo JT. So that's one of the scenarios I had in my head. And then I think, what am I doing with my money betting both Xander and Louis to win a golf tournament? So then I'm back to square one.
All right, real quick, John, tell everybody where they can find you and all the different work. Because like I said at the beginning of the show, I mean, all your writing is fantastic and top notch.
Yeah, when I'm sober, it's great. So don't judge me by this week. Touting NBA players and everything. But yeah, you can find my work on thelines.com. I do my article previews there every Sunday before the following week. And then on playpicks.com, I'll put up my favorite long shot bets and DFS value plays. Those will usually go up on Tuesdays. And then I'll post my final card and just final thoughts on the tournament on Wednesday afternoons on the lines as well.
Awesome. Keep up the good work because we love it. And again, at PGA Tout on Twitter, he will interact with you just like everybody else because, the golf betting and gambling and daily fantasy community is the best community there is in fantasy sports out there. Everyone's so interactive and we love it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Fairway to Heaven tonight, 9 p.m. We'll be back next week. Got Chris Suzuki coming on next week. So we'll be talking match play. Definitely the best event to gamble on next week. Everybody have a great night, a great weekend. Enjoy the start to March Madness. And yeah, let's have another profitable weekend, everybody. Everybody have a good one and be safe.